Good evening from New York. I am Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Conversations with Selwyn. Thank you for joining us. Those of you who are joining us for the first time, a very special thank you. CWS is about having conversations with people about their journey and how they are using their gifts and talents to help others. My guest tonight is a brother was born in Jamaica, Dr. Donald E. Moore. I'll take a short break and good evening once again. Those who have joining us for the first time, I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Conversations with Selwyn. The gentleman next to me is Dr. Donald E. Moore. Dr. Moore, good evening.
Good evening, Selwyn.
And welcome to CWS.
And it's my pleasure to be here to share this evening with your guests.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Moore earned his MD and MPH in hospital administration from the Yale School of Medicine. He subsequently completed a 3-year surgical residency at Mount Sinai Medical Center. He became board certified in emergency medicine in 1994. In 1998, he opened a full-time general medicine primary care practice at Grand Army Plaza in Brooklyn. He's currently assistant professor at Weill Medical College of Cornell University and Downstate Medical Center. Dr. Moore is co-chair of the Medical Society of the State of New York, MSSNY, Health Information Technology, HIT, Committee and Vice Chair of the MSSNY's Committee for Physicians' Health, CPH. He is past president of the Medical Society of the County of Kings, MSCK, and is currently a member of the Board of Trustees and chair of the Legislative Committee of MSCK. Dr. Moore is past president of the Association of Yale in Medicine, IAM, and is currently chair of the Communication Committee of the Executive Board of IAM. He teaches medical students from Weill Cornell, Yale, and Downstate Medical Schools, and nurse practitioner students from NYU and Hunter Nursing Schools. Dr. Moore's vision is a healthcare delivery system that maintains the true essence of the doctor-patient relationship, benefits, and trust, and his mission is to halt the corporate practice of medicine. Before I get in, I started to converse with Dr. Moore. I just want to take a moment to extend my condolences to my good friend Colonel Ferdinand and his family on the passing of his father. And I also want to wish a very happy birthday to two sisters of mine, two very good friends and sisters of mine, Jillian Eversley and my very good friend Holly Harper. Happy birthday. Dr. Moore, if you were not a physician, what would be your career?
I have often thought about that, and there really probably was no other option. I was called to medicine. When I went to college, I started out in social sciences. I thought maybe I would go into law, but in my junior year of college, far later than anyone would have made a decision to become a physician, I took a course. This course was science for non-science majors. So it meant that I was not going to do anything in science. I was trying to get away from math and science. Anyway, I took this biology course, and I had a teacher. She was so good in laying out the biologic processes. It got to me. Every single test I did, I got 100. That never happened before. At the end of the course, this teacher, Professor Chunasov, said to me, well, why don't you become a doctor? I'd never thought about that before. As a matter of fact, I had avoided anything. Prior to that, I'd avoided anything to do with medicine, health, because of previous experiences, and I can talk about that later. Anyway, just somebody asking me to do something. This was the first time in my life that someone actually came up and said, would you like to be this, or you do this? And I said yes. I had no idea what I was getting into. Absolutely none. I didn't know what a doctor did. I didn't know what the preparation was. I just said yes. And that's when I started pre-med. So I was a junior in college. I had to take an extra year in order to finish the pre-medical program. But Now I look back, and when I think of that, what else could I have done? There's nothing else that I could have done.
What did that experience, that decision, teach you about yourself?
Well, certainly it taught me that I wasn't thinking a lot about what I would do in the future, because if I had not thought about that prior to that point when I was asked, I probably should have. I think that nothing in life at this point could have given me as much joy as doing what I do now. So I really mean that I can't think of anything else that I would have done in life.
There's an interesting parallel that I want to draw your attention to, and because we're going to talk about this whole physician-patient trust later, but here's a teacher and a student, sort of a similar relationship. You're a teacher yourself.
I'd like to think so.
Well, based on what I mean, gosh. And how important, in retrospect, do you believe it was for that connection you made with that teacher then? And the second part, how important, based on that and your experience, is that teacher-student connection?
Well, clearly, I look back at that as fate. F-A-T-E. It just happened. It was probably predetermined. So, one of the quotes that I think we mentioned earlier was, luck.
Yes.
Luck is what happens when preparedness meets opportunity. No, I wasn't fooling around in college. I was studying, and I took this non-science major course because I wanted a good grade point average. But I was prepared. I was prepared to go to medical school, and I guess when I was called, I didn't have to go and fix my grades. I didn't have to go and start studying. I was already doing that. Wow. So I think the important thing was that all the way through high school, through elementary school, I was paying attention to the fact that I wanted to do something. As a matter of fact, one of the things, I pretty much dress like this just about every day. My children laugh at me. They said, "Gee, you get casual. Getting casual to you means taking off your tie." But I pretty much always have a button-down shirt. I usually have a jacket on, and that's what I generally do. When I was a kid, going to school in Jamaica, we used to wear khaki. One of the things that I really liked was when you didn't have your uniform, you got to wear a white shirt. I would love to put my white shirt on, and I was probably the only kid at the end of the day that would be going home with a white shirt that looked exactly the way it did when I started in the morning. I just wouldn't get anything on my clothes, and boys would be boys. You're jumping around, you're rolling around, but I just wouldn't get my clothes dirty. So I figured all of this was developing. I needed to wear a nice white shirt to work. I needed to be prepared, and I needed to be called, and I was called.
You were.
So there is nothing else that I think I would be doing if I wasn't practicing medicine.
Talking about Jamaica, you were born there, of course, as you mentioned. Give us a glimpse of your life as a 9-year-old and as a 16-year-old, or not 16, 14.
The recollections now, at my age, those recollections are quite are fading. However, I used to run around the street with the boys and hang out. I always preferred the girls, though. They did much nicer things. They were much nicer than the boys. So at 9 years old, my thing was to run around the block, play sports, track was my main thing, a little soccer here and there. Didn't like cricket that much because the ball was too hard. Didn't like that hard stuff hitting my hand. And, one day I was in the backyard with my brother and he hit the ball right into my eye. So ever since then, I was afraid of the ball. So, but at 9 years old, I really had no clue what I would be doing. All I knew was that I needed to study because I was told that. I wasn't forced to do that. I wasn't pushed. There wasn't anyone standing with a whip and said, if you don't study, we're going to get a whipping. It just seemed like the right thing to do. At 16, I'd already emigrated to the United States, and pretty much it was the same thing. I love to hang out. I was at 16 years old. I grew up in the Bronx. And what me and my few buddies were known, we were basically the party guys. Every Saturday night we would pack our little, I guess, were we driving? It sounds like we were driving. Yeah. Probably not at 16, but certainly by 17, 18. And we would be driving around the Bronx, picking up the girls and hanging out. So, for me, growing up was a lot of fun, but there was always a certain amount of seriousness. I always knew that something had to change. I wasn't going to be hanging out all the time, even though it seemed like I was hanging out all the time. So, but there clearly wasn't a set program for me. It was just go to school and do well.
These days, when you think of Jamaica, what comes to mind?
What comes to mind is I grew up in the city, Kingston.
Okay.
I'm a city guy. Always been a city guy. Sitting on the veranda, going to school in Warwicker Hill. Warwicker Hill is a very poor community at the foot of a mountain. And up the mountain were all the Rastafarians. And of course I was afraid of Rastafarians because everybody was afraid of Rastafarians. But they would come down to the foot of the hill and they would come to school. So here it was, I was coming from a neighborhood on the other side. I would travel long distance because we lived sort of in a suburb by that point in Kingston. So we would have to travel from this suburban area into the city, and the closest place was Rockfort. Rockfort was where my school was, and this school was at the foot of a hill. Now most of the children I went to school with were barefooted, and they were at times could be scary, but it was an interesting experience. The guys, I would have like a penny to buy an orange or something like that, and that was a whole lot of money. The guys used to tell me, boy, I'm going to turn you upside down and shake the money out your pocket if you don't give it a penny. And I always knew back then that nobody was going to push me around, so of course I wouldn't give them my penny. And they would threaten me and things would go on, and of course a lot of them were Rasta people, so of course I was afraid of them in principle. But even back then it was clear to me that I had to stand my ground wherever I was, and I also had to continue to do my work. So those are some of the recollections.
Was school back then interesting to you? Were you good at it?
No. I really wasn't good at school. School was duty. But I've always paid attention to duty. Duty was you got to go to school. Here is your lunch money, here is your bag and your books, and you must go to school. So I would go to school. So it was duty.
Who did you become? You spoke about 16 and 17 and driving around with the other friends and picking up the girls and partying. But who did you become at 21?
So at 21, I guess I was in college at the time. What was most, I guess, transformative for me in college was not being in the classroom and getting knowledge, information, was hanging around in the snack bar. We had a bunch of very, very bright young men in my college. You know, a lot of them Caribbean. We had some Guyanese, Jamaican, Trinidadian, and we had a Caribbean student organization. But these guys taught me a lot. They taught me a lot about politics. They taught me about growing up. An interesting thing that happened while we were in school, I went to Pace University, and we had a pretty strong Caribbean student organization. So the population, the black population at Pace at that time was about 4%. So one day, the guys who would normally dominate the student government, the two sides seem to be having conflict. And this small group of Caribbean guys got together and said, hey, we should put together a ticket and run for student government. And that's exactly what they did. They put together a ticket. I was the vice president on the ticket, and another bright young man, Steve, was running for president, and we put together a group. Of course, we got some dirt on the guys that were fighting, and they took care of that, and we got in. And all of a sudden, this small minority of Caribbean students, mostly black African students, was actually running the student government. So that was a very, again, transformative period, because here was another learning experience. You don't have to be in the majority to control things. You just have to be prepared. You just have to keep your eyes open and take advantage of opportunity when it comes about. Of course, we ran again the second year to try and control the government, but the guys got themselves together and they threw us out.
You know, you mentioned this word preparedness and opportunity, and I think it was Seneca, is a Roman, right, philosopher that said about luck is, right? Some people substitute the word luck with success. Would you say you're a lucky man or a successful man, or a bit of both?
Well, I am still working at it. So it is, I don't think I'm ready to say that I have been successful. You mentioned that I completed medical school. I am proud of that. But that was just one step on the ladder. You mentioned that I've been involved in a variety of organizations, and at times I've been the leader of those organizations. Those are also steps on that ladder. But for me at this point, certainly at my age, the thing that's foremost on my mind is a legacy. A legacy. I need to leave this earth different from the way I came and saw it. I need to leave medicine different from the way I came and saw it. I think just being a doctor and passing through is not enough. So success, I'm not ready to claim yet. I am on the journey to success, and I would like to stay on that journey.
Awesome. Your parents, do you recall any words of wisdom that you got from them that still resonate with you today?
Well, I grew up with two parents for about 14 years, and then my father died when I was 14. So then I had one parent for most of the rest of my life. My mother is now deceased, so I have no parents right now. My father was sort of different. He was a policeman, and he had a policeman's mentality. So he couldn't find something, and he would call all three of us, all three children together, and said, I can't find this. Who took it? Nobody admitted, so he would beat all three of us. That was his way of dealing with things. Um, I did not see things that way most of the time. I felt that there needed to be a little bit more adjudication in life with things. My mother was quite different. At about 14, I grew up and I was a big man, so I decided that I wanted things my way. So when my mother wouldn't have that, I ran away from home. She didn't come running after me. She didn't send anybody after me. She just waited and waited. And after a few days of being away from home, I realized that the grass wasn't greener on the other side. So I, got my little, with my tail between my legs, I, wandered back home. And she didn't say anything. She just left it that way. And of course, after that, things got a lot easier for her because I knew, how to do things more appropriately. And she's always been like that. She has really been my mentor. There are lots of things that I could say about her, but I think the most telling thing is the fact that, one, I've never heard her say anything bad about anybody in the entire time that I knew her. Here it is. It's hard for never to hear an individual, yes, a human being, not say a bad word about another human being. And yes, that's just the way she was. Never said anything bad about anybody else. She never pushed. She just sort of led. She led by example. Every day I'm trying to do it as good as she did it. She seemed like she knew just about every word in the dictionary. So I studied the dictionary. I would pick up the dictionary and start studying all the words. She seemed to have an endless fund of knowledge, so I read the encyclopedia as much as I can. I look up everything. If I would ask her a question about some specific knowledge piece of information, and she would say, look it up. So nowadays I look everything up. What do you think I say to all my students? Look it up. Look it up. And after they look it up, then we have a conversation. Then I can elaborate. So, those were some of the things that I recall, from my parents. And, I certainly do miss her. Talking about example. My mother, she was the typical Caribbean, typical Jamaican. She had 3 jobs, one in the daytime, one in the evening, and one on the weekend. And always had time when she came home for us children. Of course, we knew our responsibilities. We were taking care of ourselves quite well while she was at work. But not only did she work, she was always involved. She was always involved in things. I remember as a kid seeing her picture in the Gleaner with the Prime Minister getting some recognition because she was advocating for nurses and the care of the people that she took care of. So despite all the responsibilities that she had, she was still taking care of her civic responsibility and doing things. And she did the same things here. And, again, just the same way I never heard anyone say anything bad about her, I never heard anyone say anything bad about her. So, it went both ways. It's the way she treated people, is the way she presented herself, and it's the way people viewed her and what she did. At 60 years old, to my surprise, because it seemed like she would work forever, to my surprise, she just stopped working. She says, I'm tired. Your children are now all finished college, and I don't like this work that I'm doing that much anymore. So she stopped working. So she stopped at 60. For about 10 years, she sort of withdrew into herself. She did things, she kept herself up and everything. And then one day I received a painting by mail. She was living in Florida, I was in New York, and I got this painting. And it was a very nice painting, and I looked at it and I saw my mother's name, her signature on the painting. I called my brother and he said, yeah, I got a couple of paintings too. And my sister, she got some paintings. And everybody was getting paintings. She started painting and she started sending these paintings all to her friends. Well, we had, in 2004, we had an exhibition in my office on Eastern Parkway. We exhibited about 150 paintings. Remarkable work.
What?
Remarkable work. This woman was a prolific painter between 70 and about 85 years old.
Did you see any signs of her artistic ability when you were a kid?
Well, we saw signs. She was the lady that everybody would call when there was a wedding to decorate. She would do her embroidery. She would make artificial flowers. She would, if there was a wedding, she would make the artificial roses and different things. So she had that artistic talent. But you know that oil painting is not something you just pick up and do. That's something you have to learn. And she never shied away from learning anything, no matter how technical it was. I mean, I remember when we first came up, she sanded the floors, sanded the wooden floors. You know, this was what she did. You know, I eventually one day sanded my floors, and I got sick after I did that. I mean, that was some hard work. So, but this was a woman.
Yes.
You know, so she taught me respect for women, and she also. But I never saw her as a woman, and that's how I bring up my daughters. I don't tell them that they are ladies and whatever. They are students. They are superstars. They are whatever they need to be. They just happen to be girls. But I demand from them the same thing that I would demand from a son, and I expect them to perform in the same manner, because that's how I saw my mother. She was mother, and later she became mother and father, and then she became mentor, then she became artist, and she, you know, she's been so much for so many people. And so, you know, when I think about legacy, I have an example that and a very, very high example. You know, it's not easy for me to get to her legacy. So I have a lot of work to do.
Of course, I was going to ask you who, along, you know, during the different phases of your life as a child, a teenager, and then an adult, have influenced you. But I can see your mother is a common thread throughout all those periods. If you were to eavesdrop your parents, I know your dad died when you were 14, but if you were to eavesdrop your parents telling a stranger about you, what do you think your mother would say, and then your dad?
Well, I can't. I'm not sure what my dad would say, because, you know,
So long ago.
it's been so long.
Yeah.
But I certainly can tell you what my mother would say. Everybody tells me that she thinks a lot about me, but she didn't tell me that. You know, they all say, "Oh, your mother, you're her favorite, whatever." But the other thing is, there was no way one could figure who is the favorite, because she treated us all the same. You know, and if she had a favorite, none of us knew that. If I was eavesdropping, I have no idea what she would say, because she sort of never opened up. You know, we always knew she loved us, but she was not the kind of person that would come around, hug you, kiss you, and I love you, I love you. You know, that was not how we operated. Well, there was a certain amount of there was always respect in the house. There was always deportment. There was behavior. You know, I remember when I was a kid, and we would be on the veranda playing, and you know, boys and whatever, and you start shouting and carrying on, and you would break out into your patois, and I would hear Donald. Never in a loud voice, and you know, everything would stop. All my friends, everybody would stop, and I would have to go in, and then she would say, like, "What do you mean by uno?" You know, so you know, and so, you know, you had to go back out, and you know, when my friends used to come to play with me, the first thing they would say is, "Mrs. Moore home?" You know, because there would be a different behavior for everybody's behavior. My friends be everybody. We always had to have a different sort of behavior. So, she was sort of, and again, she wasn't rough. She never shouted at anybody. She never scolded anybody. It was just, if Mrs. Moore is home, this is how you behave. This is how you keep your voice low, and all of this. So respect.
Then there's your medical career.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about this early phase when you did your surgical residency.
Mm-hmm.
3 years?
I did 3 years of surgical residency.
And then you moved into emergency medicine.
I moved into emergency medicine.
What was the trigger that caused that?
Well, these are all mistakes.
Mistakes?
Mistakes, of course. Lots of mistakes. And that's the other thing. My mother, she never blamed me for any mistakes. She just sort of expected that you would figure it out. As a matter of fact, when I got into a few medical schools, it was quite impressive because at graduation from PACE, when they call you across the stage, they actually stopped and mentioned, this graduate had all these opportunities. So when I'm there trying to figure out where I'm going to medical school, my mother said, go to Yale. And that's what I did. I went to Yale. And it's interesting because I always did what she wanted me to do, but she never forced me to do anything. Anyway, when I finished Yale, I was enamored with surgery. Yes, this is a wonderful thing. I'm going to become a plastic surgeon, and I'm going to, go do my general surgery residency and So I went to Mount Sinai, and coming out of Yale was a little different. Yale was a different kind of medical school. First of all, we never had exams. So here it is, you go through a pre-medical program, everybody's testing you all the time, then all of a sudden you go to this place and these people say, well, we know you're bright because you're here. So since you're here, we expect you to just study. Your study will be up to you. You pursue this independent course of study. You don't have to go to lectures. All you have to do is you have to always go to these conferences where we have discussions, and you don't have to take an exam. All you have to do is at the end of the second year, you need to pass the boards. And if you don't pass the boards, you can't move along. And that's how it was. So we would do independent study. That's how we did medical school. Many people can't handle that, and many people don't succeed in that process. But I was in my glory because I hated exams. I never liked taking exams. I always wanted to study what I wanted to study, and so the funny thing is I always went to class. I liked going to class. That was one of my things. I guess it was my upbringing going to class. So I would go to class, and classes were, for the most part, quite interesting. It's people don't become Nobel laureates because they're uninteresting. They're usually very interesting. And to sit in a class and hear, somebody like George Palade talk about the cell and cell biology, and the guy who discovered one of the organelles in the cell talk about it, it's an opportunity of a lifetime. So I came out and I was like so many Yale graduates. I was gonna become some big hotshot plastic surgeon, and I'd be fixing faces of all the stars and whatever. So I went to Mount Sinai, and it really wasn't exactly like that. All of a sudden I went back into the real world. What I didn't like was that people started telling me what to do again. My senior resident was telling me what to do. Everybody was telling me what to do, and I didn't like that. I was not cut out that way. By the time I got to the third year, we were having lots of issues. I was involved with, let's say there were issues with the administrative people. So I'll give you an example. This is back in the, I guess we're talking about early 1980. So back then, I remember one day, a crazy person took a gun and shot one of the doctors at the VA. So the VA, being the United States government, decided that what they would do is they would put up I guess, a screening process so that people don't come into the hospital with guns. Back then, nobody was being searched for anything, pretty much. But the VA started to do this. So they would put this, I guess, metal detector at the entrance into the VA hospital, and I was doing one of my rotations there in surgery. I didn't think, or I didn't believe that I should be searched to go into a hospital. Here it was, I was a surgical resident. So I would refuse to let them search me. And of course, I'm dealing with the federal government, and they say, well, gee, where do you come from? You're going to be searched. So the first time I refused to be searched, they pulled me over and they handcuffed me and they put me off to the side and da-da-da-da. So finally, the surgical department come and pull me out of this. So the next day comes, I still am not going to be searched. So you can't go in. So here it is. The surgical resident can't go into the hospital to do his studies. And this went on, days pass, weeks pass, and I'm not going to work because I won't let them search me and they won't let me come in unless I get searched. So, we started having these obstacles. Now, of course, there weren't too many mentors around to call me over and say, come on, guy, let me straighten you out and help you out a little bit. There was nobody, so I was on my own. I didn't tell my mother these things, that this was all going on. As it turns out, eventually we were having another issue, and they eventually evicted me out of my apartment. So I just quit. I just told them, I'm done. And I walked away. I didn't realize you couldn't walk away from a surgical residency. And as a result, I had to find something else to do. So, at that point, I was already a licensed physician. So I got a job. I went to Kings County. And I started working in the emergency room using my surgical skills. And, I started sewing up people in the ER, and things are going well. But then I ran up against the administrative people again. Back then, I don't know how it is now, but it was a dirty place. And, I didn't think that you should be treating patients in a dirty place. So I would have my standard. I would go in and I would say, this is a dirty room. I will not work here. I need somebody to come and clean this room. So if nobody came, I would go get the mop and I would sweep the room and I would clean the room. And of course, that would make people upset. Why is this doctor mopping the floor and sweeping the room? And so after a couple of years, well, I was there for about 10 years. After a while, they got tired of me, and when they found the opportunity, they fired me. Things weren't going so well. This guy keeps getting either quitting or getting fired. Then it clicked. Well, maybe I can't work for other people. Maybe at that point, I actually had already started my practice and I was already doing my own thing. But, we need jobs, especially early in your career. You need jobs. You need to put together your resources. I eventually, at a certain point, said, I'm just going to do this on my own. I am a licensed physician. I have training. I am beginning to understand. So maybe it's time now I set my own mission statement. I set my own goals, and I should move it. And that started about in the I would say 1995. So from about that point, I was moving fully in towards my goals in my direction, establishing the kind of medical practice that I wanted to establish. We talked about, where you were back then. When I applied to medical school, we all go through the same process. Everybody who wants to go to medical school go through the same process. You got to do pre-med. After you do pre-med, then you have to create some reason why you want to become a doctor. Well, again, because I didn't know what doctoring was when I decided I wanted to become a doctor, I had to create a reason why I wanted to become a doctor. So life, the way life is, found ways to educate me. I remember one day I was out in the street and there was a car accident, and I ran to the accident and I, provided first aid. Another time, I saw somebody sick and I ran, and I like that. I like running to rescue. So there was that aspect. But as I developed the philosophy of the way my life should be, what I realized is that I wanted to change things for people. And it may sound trite, but that's what most people who want to become doctors decide. They want to change life for other people. And I felt that I wanted to influence the health of all people that came within the sphere of my influence. And the only way I could really do that is to establish to pull together my own resources, set my own mission, and do it the way that I think I should be doing it. So hence I'm here at this point.
This is a good point to take a break. We take a quick break. We are back with Dr. Donald Moore. Dr. Moore, tell us your history as a teacher. How did you got involved with teaching?
Well, the word doctor means teacher. I see myself as a teacher. The word physician is healer. The reason why I teach, it keeps me sharp. It also gives me the opportunity to have a legacy. Your students are the ones who are going to carry your legacy on. So I must admit, and I am not so proud of this, but I like bright students. I am not, my wife is quite interesting. She teaches autistic children, and I just wonder, how could somebody have that kind of patience to work, like that? Me, I like bright students. I don't like arrogant students. I like bright students. I like people who are inquisitive. So I like students who are going to challenge me, who are going to make me go back to the books. You asked me a question and I really didn't have a full answer. One of the things that I do in my practice is we do a lot of teaching. I teach, I have medical students, I have nurse practitioners, so we always have a student. Today I had a medical student in the office, I had a nurse practitioner student, and simultaneously, so I'm going from patient to patient, area to area with different students, and my patients, they're used to it. And they're comfortable with that. They know, one is, I won't let the student loose on them. That student will be right close to me. That student will not do anything without me being aware of it. And one of the things I always make sure that the students realize is their limitations and the privilege that a patient may give them, to give them the opportunity to learn. So in that setting, education occurs, but not just education occurs, healing occurs. One of the things that the students bring to the practice is patients are always starved for time. They want more time with that health professional. They want more time with the nurse. They want more time with the doctor. Students have that. They have time, and they also have knowledge. So all that comes together, and that's what I like in the patient encounter. I like to have students for those reasons.
If it has changed, how has the way medicine is taught changed over the past 10 years?
10 years? Medicine hasn't changed that much over the past 10 years. Certainly it's changed over the past 100 years. Where we're going, though, is of some concern to me. When I was taught, when I was a medical student, we were expected to be extremely detailed with the work that we did. You know, we were told, you are a student. You are not here to work. You're here to learn. The residents, they are working. They're learning differently. You don't do what the residents do. You do what the students do. So they would give us a patient, and we would talk to that patient. And at the end of that discussion, we would sit down and we would write 10, 15-page write-ups on these patients. We wouldn't just, so how's your headache? Where does it hurt? Da 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 da. No. We would have to really get details. Now, how does that impact medicine? I'll give you an example. I remember my wife was having chest pain. So she went to a colleague of mine, and he did what 90% of the doctors would have done. He did a bunch of tests. Boom, boom, boom. He looked at the tests and he said, oh, tests are fine, you're okay. She didn't buy that. So she was still having this discomfort. So her mother told her about this doctor, who I happened to find out later on was a pretty well-known cardiologist at Mount Sinai, the dean of cardiology, they would say. And he went to see her. She went to see him. When she got there, she went in to the consultation, and she spent a long time, probably close to an hour. At the end of towards the end of the visit, he called me in. I was in the waiting room, and he basically gave his conclusions. And then he said, everything is fine, don't worry. So she left, and her problem went away. Problem went away. He didn't do a test. He didn't do anything. He just reviewed what the other doctor had done. About a month later, I guess, since she wasn't referred, he didn't have anywhere to send a consultation report, so he sent it to me. I read that report. What this famous cardiologist did was a medical student write-up, the kind of write-ups I was used to seeing when I was in medical school, where you would basically study the person. The point is this: how can you tell me what's wrong with me if you don't know me? How can you know me if you didn't talk to me? How could you didn't spend any time with me. You just did a test. I don't care about that test. You know, this when the Affordable Care Act, so-called Obamacare, came in, you know, I was paying a lot of money for my health insurance. So I said, maybe I'll go on this exchange and I'll get some cheaper insurance. So I went on the exchange. I dropped my insurance, went on the exchange, couldn't get anything that was of any value to me. So I went back to my previous insurance company and I said, oh, okay, I want my insurance back. They said, oh, you can't get that anymore. We don't give that to you anymore because you're a small business. However, you can get this other one. So what I had before was sort of the equivalent of a platinum plan, so they gave me this gold plan. So this gold plan then required that in order for me to see a specialist, which I wanted to see, I would have to go and see a primary care physician first. So I'm saying, geez, why do I have to go see a primary care? Anyway, maybe it's a good thing. I need an exam. I need a good checkup. I need to make a relationship with a doctor. So, you know, my appointment was at 10 o'clock. I got there 9:30. They gave me some terrible forms. I filled out those forms. So I went in. The doctor shook my hand, and that was the closest I got to him. After that, he never came. I was dressed like this. I never loosened my tie. I was out there within, I went to see him at 10:05. At 10:17, I was on the street. 10:17. This doctor didn't touch me. He didn't put a stethoscope on me. At one point, he read the papers I filled out and he said, oh, so you'd like an HIV test? I said, well, as long as you're going to take my blood, I might as well do an HIV test. He says, oh, we don't need to do the blood. And I'm figuring, what? He doesn't know me. He didn't even take a history. How does he know if, I'm a primary care physician. Does he want to know what my cholesterol is? Doesn't he need to know my PSA? All right. So how has medicine changed? What are we teaching today? We're teaching students to sit in front of computers and order tests. We're not teaching them to sit in front of an individual and engage them. Before I order any test on you, I ought to know what the answer is likely to be. I need to know how to interpret that test. And guess what? If you don't trust me, whatever I tell you, you're not going to believe anyway. If I told you the test shows X and you need medicine Y, you won't take medicine Y if I don't know you. How would you know that I need medicine Y? So there is a relationship that needs to form between the healer and the individual who presents himself to be healed. And we talked earlier about my colleague Dr. Kokai. He spends time with his patients. He spends a lot of time with his patients. They trust him. And I hope my patients trust me because I spend time with them, and I want to spend more time with them. I wish I could spend more time, but it's certainly not 10 minutes. It takes 10 minutes for me to say hello, and takes another 10 minutes for me to talk to you and find out what's going on. Takes another 10 minutes to examine you thoroughly. Then it takes 10 minutes to come back in and talk to you and recap everything, and it takes another 10 minutes to get you out. If you add all those 10 minutes up, you're close to an hour, and sometimes more. That's what it takes. Doctors don't spend that kind of time anymore. We don't teach the new doctors that they need to do that. So that's what's different within the last 10, 20 years.
What happens, talking about trust, what happens when that trust breaks down?
Well, most of the time with the relationships that physicians today have with their patients, it's not that the trust breaks down, it's that the trust was never there. You see, that's the problem. They never engaged with HMOs, which and these plans, which now the patients don't go to see the doctor anymore. They go to the center, or they're not part of a physician's group of patients anymore. They're part of a plan, and they see the physician or the health practitioner as somebody associated with the plan. When I dropped most of my commercial insurances, the patient says, "Oh, you're dropping me." I said, "No, I'm not dropping you. I'm just no longer accepting that insurance as a method of payment. I'm right here. The relationship that I have with you, the relationship between a doctor and a patient is not a contract. The relationship between a physician and an insurance company is a contract. They're two different things. The relationship between a patient and a physician is a relationship. Whether or not we explicitly decided we're going to do something, the mere fact that you present to me, I am vulnerable, I am ill, or I need advice, and I present myself, I'm a physician, I'm a knowledgeable person, I am here for you. That's a relationship that takes time, that needs to develop. And after a couple of times, then maybe you will begin to develop trust, and I will be able to give you a therapy that will work. He who the patient trusts is the one who heals best.
And Dr. Moore, you make house calls, and even though you stated that there's only one reason to treat patients at home is because they need care, I feel compelled to ask you, why did you start making house calls, and do you ever feel like no longer doing it?
All right, I'll give you the real answer
Yes.
first, the practical answer. So when I left that surgical residency program, I needed a job. So there was a group in Brooklyn called Doctors on Call, and they offered me a job. They said, "Oh, we'll give you a job today." So I took the job. At the same time, Kings County offered me a job, so I took that job. I'm Jamaican, so any job I get, I just take. So all of a sudden, I'm doing two jobs, and one of them was a house call job, the other one was a hospital job. Just the place I needed to be. And then of course I've subsequently developed my office. So. And again, we talk about faith earlier,
yes.
and that's what it is. Where should a doctor treat a patient? You should treat them in the hospital, right? That's where the tools are. That's where the setting. That's the appropriate setting for a patient who requires tertiary care. Basically somebody who is ill, who no longer can be managed at home or in the office, should be managed in a hospital. But the home is an ideal place to treat many patients. There are patients who can't leave the house easily. Why should you take somebody who is bedbound, wrap them up, and put them on a stretcher and roll them into some doctor's office or some hospital clinic just so that you can do routine care? Isn't it a lot easier for the physician to go to the patient's home, see that person in their environment, make sure that things in that environment is appropriate? So much easier. And of course in the office. So I believe in what I refer to as horizontal integration of that patient care. It's across the board. Wherever that patient is, that's where I go. If the patient can make it into my office, fine. I've created what I consider the ideal environment to do that. If the patient ends up in the hospital, because nobody wants to be in a hospital, if the patient goes there, I go there. If the patient can't come out but don't need to be in the hospital, I go to the house. So I treat patients, we show patients we care. We show families we care when we go into the house to heal. And, incidentally, that's where, we talked about medicine. Well, I talked about medicine 100 years ago. That's where we treated patients. Or we treated our patients. This concept of a doctor's office or a clinic, that's a relatively recent concept. The home was where the doctor went to see the patient. You jump on your horse and buggy right to the house, and you see the patient there. You call me in the morning, expect me at some point as I make the rounds. That's what rounds is all about. It's not just rounds in the hospital, it's rounds to all the different houses.
In the chat room, Andy said Dr. Moore raised to live with purpose, regardless of employment, rare things. And G said, Dr. Moore, have you implemented e-charting? If so, are you subject to any documentation requirements that you think adversely affect the time you can spend with your patients? How do you handle it?
All right. Well, let me just brag a little bit.
Yes.
We were one of the first practices in the country, the entire United States.
Your office.
My practice.
Your practice
was one of the first in the United States to attest to meaningful use. Meaningful use is the federal government's program using electronic records meaningfully. When we were ready to attest that we could use an electronic record meaningfully, our vendor, the people who managed our software, weren't ready. We had to wait a few days till they got ready for us. I started using electronic records in 2005. I did that not because I wanted to be first, but I am obsessive and compulsive. I wanted to have the best medical record that I could possibly have, because that's part of my responsibility, not just to see the patient, but to create a record that's legible and reflects the care of the patient, and something that could be interoperable, something that other practitioners could use to help in managing the patient's care. So when we started, the question was, well, did that come between me and the patient? Of course it did. Anything you bring into the consultation room, into the exam room, is likely to come between you and the patient. But it's a tool. My stethoscope comes between me and the patient, but it's a tool. I use it. The electronic record comes between me and the patient, but I use it. It's a tool. So, of course, when I should have been taking typing in high school, I was there doing shop, figuring out how to build silly things. I should have been taking typing. Well, I didn't, so I'm suffering today. So I can't type fast. I can click, but I still can't click fast. So of course it takes me time to do the record. But that's just an element of what I do. My mother started painting at 60. I could certainly learn to use a computer at 40 or whenever it was that I started. So we are we're on the forefront of this. We just attested to the second stage of meaningful use. We're in the process of becoming a patient-centered medical home. We do PQRS. These are all government programs that encourage physicians to digitalize the record. Mm-hmm. We stopped having paper charts. We got rid of our paper charts from 2007. So, I haven't seen a paper chart. We now use the file room as an examination room area. So, we got rid of that. But, there's certain things that one had to learn. For example, in the beginning, I would look at the patient and I would say straight to their face, listen, I'm new at this. I'm going to be looking at this screen an enormous, for a long time sometimes. Just bear with me. What do you think the patients did when I'm on my screen? They would whip out their cell phone and they would go on their stuff. And when I was ready to come back, they would stop and they would come back. So, you sort of work it out. You negotiate. And that's what I think physicians have to do with patients all the time. We have to negotiate that therapeutic environment. We have to negotiate the care.
I want to ask you next to describe the relationship between physicians and commercial insurance today. But before that, you mentioned electronic and technology and so on, and I just want to briefly mention Dr. Ernest Madu. I don't know if you ever heard of him. I had him as a guest on my show. Mm-hmm. He's Nigerian, currently in Jamaica. And why I brought him up is because he introduced electronics and technology into his whole operation. He's one of those physicians who believe that it is important to have affordable health care for poor communities. And he set up, I think, 3 centers in Jamaica where he uses technology to interface with doctors from around the world to help him to diagnose certain conditions and so on. I asked him to tune in today to check you out. I just want to make that comment of how technology can help us or help physicians to provide better care. But let's go back to the question: how would you describe the relationship between physicians and commercial insurance today?
Mm-hmm. Well, Well, certainly you mentioned telemedicine, which, I think is certainly an opportunity to bring care to places where you don't have enough health resources, enough physicians, and so on. Mm-hmm. And, and I'm getting to your question. I just want to point out that you saw when I walked in here, I didn't come in with a briefcase with a whole stack of papers. I came in here with a tablet. I came in here with an iPad and a cell phone, and that's my entire world. I can go on that. I can write prescriptions. I can do just about anything that I can do in my office. When I make my house calls, I have the same thing. As a matter of fact, I'll introduce you to a recent article I wrote, a tablet, a stethoscope, and the future of medicine. And and that is pretty much where I see medical records and technology, certainly for me in primary care. Mm-hmm. And it does, it certainly does come between the patient, but I could show you also that it does enhance the care. So when I'm in the house, in the old days, I never had access to the record. Now I'm in the house, but I have the same access to the record as if I were in the office or in the hospital. When I go to the hospital, I can look at the records in my office from the same iPad, the same instrument. I talk into it and it starts writing certain parts of my record. So going back to the commercial insurances and the relationship with the patient, we do not need any commercial insurance in medicine today. We don't need hundreds of insurance companies making life more difficult for patients, making life more difficult for doctors, making life more difficult for the hospital. These commercial insurances, the bottom line is profit. Their mission is not care for people. Their mission is profit for their shareholders. If they're non-profit, their mission is still profit. You know, non-profit is a euphemism. So the bottom line is we don't need that. If healthcare is a basic human right, and I believe it is, then we should make it as simple as possible. Why not just have one insurance? Patients should have choices of doctors. They should have choices of hospitals. They should have choices of their health facilities, not choices of insurance companies. As a matter of fact, the more insurance companies you have is the less your choice. What do I mean by that? Every physician can't belong to every commercial insurance. So what generally happens is this particular commercial insurance will encourage a group of doctors to belong to their network. Then the other one will have another set of doctors belonging to their network. Then they fight amongst each other to sign the patients up. So this commercial insurance has this group of patients and this group of hospitals and physicians within their panel. If you try to leave that network, you're penalized. Either they don't cover the service or you have to pay extra out of your own pocket in order to go out of network. If everybody had Medicare, right? Let's say we all had Medicare from cradle to grave, one single insurance, then doesn't matter. You go to Dr. Moore, of course, it's only one insurance, so he's going to take Medicare. You go to Dr. Smith, only one insurance. He's going to take Medicare. You go to Methodist Hospital, doesn't matter. They take Medicare. You go to Cornell, Weill Cornell, they take Medicare. You go anywhere in the country, it's the same insurance, one insurance. So why don't we just have one insurance from cradle to grave for everybody? Medicare operates with a cost of 3%, 2 to 3%. Do you know the commercial insurance operate with an administrative cost of between 20 and 30%? So that's the amount of your health dollar that's going to the administrative process. That's not any part of your care. So we don't need them. Why do you think we have them? We have them so that people can make money. That's the only reason, so that people can make money off your health delivery. It's totally unnecessary. And there are a lot of people that agree with me on that one. There's some people that don't agree, but those people are basically out to make a profit off your health.
The physician-patient model, do you have a mission for improving or transforming it? The physician-patient model, and if so, what is it, or your vision for an improved one?
Well, at this point, I have no plan to invent the wheel. I think the model, we have many models, and I think they've been worked out quite well. I think the problem that we have today is really the financing of healthcare. So I strongly believe that we need to move to a single payer, which is what I've been talking about, and we need to get rid of this multi-system, multiple insurances. Why are we getting our insurance from our employer? We don't have one employer through our entire life. As a matter of fact, you don't have an employer if you're 10 years old. So why are you getting an insurance from your employer? Why not just pay the taxes? Taxes are the fairest way to collect money for a group. And then, let the legislators work out what benefits they're going to agree to for the different individuals in the society based on their age. A pregnant woman doesn't need the same set of services as a 2-year-old child, and a 2-year-old child doesn't need the same set of services as an 80-year-old. So we can work all of that out. We already know what they need. What we don't need is just a whole lot of different insurance companies creating different plans for everybody and making it so extremely difficult. When I took commercial insurances, most of the time I had no idea what the individual insurance covered. I would go ahead and treat, and then I would hope for the best, hope that it was covered, hope that they don't charge the patient a whole lot of money for the service that I ordered, and hope that I get paid. And that's the reality that exists currently. So it is a mess. It is a real mess.
So how did the whole Affordable Care Act affect you?
Well, the purpose of the Affordable Care Act was to increase the amount of people that are insured. I think that's a travesty. First of all, why do we have 50 million people in the country that don't have insurance? That doesn't make any sense. Because yes, we all believe that everybody should be taken care of. I don't know anybody who believes that a sick person ought to be left on the sidewalk to just sit there and die. I don't know anybody that believes that. So we all agree that we want that person taken care of. So if the person can't afford to take care of it themselves, then we all pitch in. That's what we all would do. So why don't we just have a system to do that? Why then did the Affordable Care Act send that individual to some exchange website to buy commercial insurance? Why didn't we just give that person Medicare? Why didn't we we did give some Medicaid, we expanded Medicaid, but that didn't make a lot of sense, because now you and I are going to pay for that person without insurance, giving the commercial insurance company 20% of that dollar in order to provide the care. Wow. We could have spent the whole dollar on the care, or at least 98 cents. Medicare would take 2% for its administrative charge.
What is you believe is the most misconceptions about house calls? Or some of the misconceptions people have about house calls?
Well, the misconception, I'm not sure if anyone even, I'm not sure most people understand what it's all about. However, I could tell you what it's about. First of all, it's not much different from an office visit. The only thing that has changed is the location. You still get your vital signs done, you still get a physical examination, you still get a diagnosis made, and you still get a prescription if you need a prescription, whatever that prescription is. So what is different about it is that when I go into a house, I am dealing with not just one person. I am dealing generally with a family. If the person lives alone and they can't come out, there's usually a caregiver. So there is somebody else there. Sometimes it's a grandchild, a toddler that's running around. Sometimes it's a cat that's trying to get into your bag. Sometimes it's a dog that's trying to get petted. So, these are the different things that occur on a house call. Kids are fascinated. I can't tell you how many times I'm walking on the street to a house call, and some kid, as they're being dragged by the parent, the kid turns back and looks, "Oh, Mom, look, a doctor." A doctor. They see the black bag. Getting into the house is an interesting process. I love going into the various houses throughout the city. It's an interesting thing to do. I feel safe doing it, despite what. So I think that's a misconception. Oh, how could you go do house calls? Aren't you afraid? No, I'm not afraid. Why should I be afraid? I'm doing a good thing. People appreciate that. So I think that's the misconception. Otherwise, it's the same as if I was seeing a patient in my office.
How does one qualify for a house visit?
Well, if Medicare is going to pay for that house call, then you're required to be homebound. If you're going to pay for it, then all you do is you just call me and I come.
That's it.
Yeah.
G in the chat room said, my impression is that people like me are becoming more and more leery of taking prescription medication. Have you encountered such patients? How do you respond to them?
Right. All right. Well, a prescription medication is generally a drug that could harm you. So you should be leery about taking any prescription, right? That's why it requires a doctor's authorization. It's not something that, anybody should do on their own. So when I prescribe, I should have some knowledge of the drug, its side effects, and its effects. Not every drug is going to be effective for every problem. So I must make a diagnosis, and I must know the level of efficacy of this particular drug. I must also know the side effects. And you, the patient, you need to trust me that I know that.
There goes that trust again.
The fidelity to the trust. If I am ignorant and I don't know about the medicine, I shouldn't be prescribing, and you shouldn't trust me. So I need to demonstrate to you that I'm competent. I also need to demonstrate to you that I'm not gonna harm you. I'm not gonna give you too much of this drug, and I'm also gonna give you the right amount, and I'm gonna stop when the drug is doing something that it shouldn't, and I'm gonna keep track of what I'm doing. A drug may be effective for a week, but may be dangerous at 2 weeks. So I need to keep track. If I'm going to add another medicine, I must know that this medicine is not going to interact with the first medicine, so I must keep track. Hence, those electronic records I was telling you about, the meticulous nature of keeping records, knowing exactly what's going on with the patient, knowing how many medicines they're on, knowing which ones were stopped, knowing what doses each ones are on. It's a lot of work to keep on track of all of these things, and electronic records helps that, and a careful physician will keep track of that. So I don't like to take medicine. I don't know why anyone would want to take medicines unless they have to, but medicines can be life-saving. And if you're in a situation where you're in extremis, you're dying, and I have a drug that can save you, then I hope that you'll allow me to give it to you, and I hope that you would trust me to do the right thing.
What do you see as some of the most common illnesses in the black community these days?
Oh, that's easy. Number 1, diabetes. Number 2, high blood pressure. Number 3, obesity. Those are, and of course we've got all the other conditions, the other 100 conditions. So of course, it's basically too much food, too little exercise. That's basically it.
What kind of medical breakthrough are you hoping for in the near future?
Medical breakthrough? You mean that I would, or
you?
That
You personally?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I fight for or struggle to do is I struggle to eliminate commercial insurances from the healthcare delivery system in the United States. And I work, as a matter of fact, before I came here, I was at a meeting of a physicians group that is their mission. Physician for a National Health Program. They support single payer. So that would be a breakthrough. I think certainly, I come from a medical school where half of my colleagues are discovering things. Folks I went to medical school with, they spend a lot of time in the lab and they're discovering things, and I think that's great. I'm glad that they're doing that because I need the tools. But what I want to see is I want to be the guy that helps the medicine to get to the patient, not necessarily the one that's going to discover the next medicine.
What keeps you going when it gets tough?
Well, first, I don't really think about it. I go to sleep. I think one of the questions they always say is, what keeps you up at night? I don't stay up at night. I just go to sleep. Usually, I'm a short sleeper, which means I sleep on about 4 hours a day, 3-4 hours. I go to bed, I don't go to bed really late, but I get up really early. I get up about 3:30 in the mornings. I go do my exercise. I gotta keep
I hear
myself
that.
healthy. I
Yeah.
exercise for about 2 hours, 2.5 hours every morning, and then I go to work. So I I I I pretty much I can't remember ever being having been tired. People would say to me, "You must be tired." I said, "I don't know.
Really?
I just go to bed at nights and I wake up early and I guess keep going." So you could tell from the time that I wake up that I'm nearing the end of my day, but I don't feel tired yet.
Apart from your mother, can you take us back in time and introduce us to someone who you admired and looked up to and who would have influenced the man we've come to know as Donald Moore, Dr. Donald Moore?
hmm I would guess that it would have been teachers that I've had as I went through. I remember one gentleman, and I don't even remember his name, but I remember that geometry was just such a hard subject to grasp. And this one teacher, he just broke it down. And after his course, geometry became easy. So, teachers have always been an important part of my life. Um, physicians. I have met throughout my life physicians who I would trust, who I felt that basically embodied all the things that we make when we take our oath: beneficence, doing good for the patient, fidelity to the trust. Always, you could trust them. You could be sure that this physician would be doing the right thing. One of the things that I fear is happening today is that physicians are using their license to practice medicine for corporate entities that don't have the patient's interests up front. So, a corporate entity will hire a physician and say, okay, I'm paying your salary, so you will do A, B, C. And the physician who would like to have a big house, a big car, a big whatever, goes ahead and not necessarily purposefully, but somehow adjusts their ethical posture in order to accomplish what this corporate entity would like. And that's what I refer to when I talk about the corporate practice of medicine. It's not a corporation coming around and saying, I have a medical license, I'm going to practice medicine. No, it's this corporate entity that hires physicians, HMOs that hires physicians to deny care to patients. Here, a good example, we talk about house calls. What some of these Medicare, and Medicaid Advantage plans are doing is they're sending nurses into the home claiming that they're making house calls, right? So they go into the home claiming to make a house call, but they're not interested in making a house call. What they're interested in is finding problems with the patient so that they can increase the severity of illness of the panel. So they can say, okay, I went to this person's house. I find that they can't do this and they can't do that, so they're actually sicker than we thought. So this way they get more money from Medicare.
Oh.
And has nothing to do with the care. I had these companies, these insurance companies, going in to the house of patients. I make house call, remember that. So they go into my patients' homes, patients that don't need house calls because they're coming in to see me in the office. Even I would go and see them if they needed the house call. So I have already determined, the patient already determined, I don't need a house call. Yet the insurance companies are making house calls on these patients, not because they need a house call, but to go in to discover things about them so they could increase the severity of illness on their insurance panel so they could get more money from Medicare. So that kind of gamesmanship that we're playing with the healthcare system, that's what happens when you bring in these, I call them interlopers. These are entities that are not within that physician-patient dyad, that relationship. They're outside, but they are prostituting that relationship in order to make money. So I think that needs to be removed from medicine. And these insurance companies, they're doing it. The same ones you see out there.
Is it possible to remove that?
Well, it's only something that can be done through the legislature, and which is why I spend a significant amount of my time with the legislators in New York State and the legislators in our United States Congress. And I do lobby them. I lobby them.
You keep.
Yeah, I keep hammering on them that
yes.
We need to get rid of this. We need to get rid of these people, these entities that are coming between the providers. And I don't use the word providers a lot, but here now I mean the hospitals, the nurses, the physicians, the social workers, all these professionals who are providing direct patient care. These entities come in, utilize their license in order to make profit. So that's something that I would like to clear, and that before I leave medicine.
Well, I keep that fight up, Dr. Moore. That is important for us. What are some simple health tips you can give us this evening? Just maybe 2 or 3.
All right. Yeah, I like giving tips. One is, I like to create controversy. One is eat your food, don't drink it. Nowadays, eat your food, don't drink it. This thing they call juicing. Where did that come from? When do adults start grinding up their food and drinking it? Why do we need to do that? We don't need to do that. That's why we have teeth. We have teeth to grind our food up. Eat your food. When you get an apple, right? An apple is nature's best. Nature puts it in a skin so it stays correct. When you bite into an apple, you notice it turns brown within a few minutes to hours. Right. Yet that skin is there and it stays just right. Right? So you bite that apple and you chunk it up, you chew it up, and you swallow it. That's what you're supposed to do with an apple. You're not supposed to put it in some machine, grind it up, and drink it. The reason why you don't do that is, one, when you take all your food and you grind it up, then you're taking a lot more food than you need. Because you notice in order to make apple juice, how many apples would you need to make a glass of apple juice? Quite a few, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you don't sit there and eat 6 apples at one time, you eat 1. You don't sit and eat 5 bananas at one time, you eat 1, right? So there is something just natural about eating a fruit. There is nothing natural about grinding it up in a man-made machine and then drinking it. That's not natural. When food goes into your intestines go through a whole series of processes. One is when the food hits your mouth and you start grinding it up with your teeth are working. You need to use your teeth all the time. If you don't use your teeth, they fall out and they go bad. So you need to work your teeth. When the food is in your mouth, enzymes are released further down in the intestines that prepare to digest this food. You have insulin, incretins, all these things keep the blood sugar at a normal level. If you drink all that calorically dense stuff that you have ground up, you're assaulting your intestines all of a sudden with a whole bunch of calories. It has no time to prepare. You're going to take more than you really need. The brain needs to be signaled. I have chumped up and swallowed X amount of food. It's time to shut down the appetite. If you drank it, you gave it no time. So eat your food. Don't drink it. If you want to drink something, drink water. It has no calories. It's not going to hurt you. Your kidney will get rid of all the excess. Yeah, that's
So
my tips are long.
you're kind of like assaulting and cheating the network when you drink, when you grind things up and you drink it.
Yes.
You know. Wow.
Yes. I'm also treating all these people who sell a whole bunch of juices to people. Yeah. I'm cheating them out of their profits.
Yes, of course.
That's what I'm saying. I don't like people coming into medicine and taking, and distorting it and taking, it. All right, let me stop. Let me stop.
Okay, so that's one. Give us another one. Give us another one.
Basically, you need to exercise every single day. And if you can't do it every day, do it at least 5 days a week. Get up and move. No matter what you have. If your knee hurts, you need to exercise. If your back hurts, you need to exercise. If you come to me and you tell me you have a problem with your knee and I do something to your knee, what is the next thing I'm going to do? I'm going to send you to physical therapy. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to exercise you. You don't need to go to physical therapy all the time. Sure, there are times when you need professional help, but most of the time you don't need professional help. You just need to get out there and move. You don't need to go to the gym. That's just another way of pulling money out of the system. Go out in the street, walk in the park. We have the loveliest parks. We have so many parks. Prospect Park, one of the most beautiful places in the world. We've got Central Park, beautiful. Go there, just walk around. You got beautiful flowers and plants, and the roads are paved, it's well lit. Why aren't we using this stuff? That's all your health. You don't need to be going to the gym paying all this whole lot of money to people to sit there and tell you to move. You just move. So those are some of the tips.
What is one thing that people would be surprised to know about you, Dr. Moore?
Oh gosh. I don't think I have too many surprises. I telegraph everything that's going on in my life. As a matter of fact, my wife says I talk too much. So I don't think people would be surprised to know about anything. But maybe a couple things. One is I love plants. I have a green thumb. I can grow anything.
Oh really?
Oh yeah, I can grow anything. And I think it's akin to taking care of people. These are living things. If you can make something grow, and then I think that's a good thing. So I pat myself on the shoulder when I grow a nice, beautiful plant. And plants are just like people. They grow old, they die. You just gotta let them go. But then while they're here, you gotta make them flourish. You gotta let them bloom. You've gotta make them shine.
What is it about your work that feeds your spirit?
I guess we come back to that word, success. The success feeds my spirit. What is success for me? Success is, when a patient comes in and their blood sugar is out of control, their A1C is at 10 and 12. The A1C, that's the average glucose that we use to measure how a person is doing with their diabetes. And you tweak the medicine, you give them an exercise program, you give them a diet, and they come back and that A1C comes down and it gets below 7, and it gets to 6.5, and it gets to 5, it gets to normal. And you say, this person was on the wrong road, and you sort of help them get on the right road, and it wasn't, and it's not all about the drugs, it's about the relationship. And there may be drugs, and there usually is a drug that's involved in getting the diabetic under control. So that's success. Success is when the patients don't get heart attacks and they don't get strokes. You don't see that. You don't see what you don't get, right? You don't see it. You just didn't get it. So, when I can say that, gee, I can't remember one of my patients getting a heart attack. I can't remember my last patient that got a heart attack. I can't even remember the last patient that got a stroke. That's not me. I didn't stop them from getting the heart attack and the stroke. No, they did. But I helped them get to that point. So that's success. That's what really, gets me going. So, having those conversations, having a conversation with you, talking about medicine. I love to talk about medicine.
What do you do on your days off?
I read medicine. No, what I do on my days off. That's a really good question. You really dig it. What I do on my days off is I go to the office and I do maintenance. I do the maintenance work. I'm the maintenance guy in the office, which means I prune the plants, I fix them, I do all kind of things. I may go for extra long walks on my days off. I don't play golf. I don't play tennis. So I go for an extra long walk. I may do a 4 hour walk or a 5 hour walk. I may do, instead of doing my usual, I may do 5, 6, 10 miles. That's my regular thing. I may do a 15-mile walk. That takes me quite a while, and then when I come back, I'm kind of beaten up, so I gotta go back into bed for a while. So I'll do that. That's the kind of thing, and of course, I still get out to the parties and stuff like that.
Okay, that's good to know. If you had a chance to go back in time, what would you tell the 14-year-old boy?
I'll tell him, get prepared. You don't know what you're going to be doing. Don't think you know what you're going to do at 14. You have no idea.
True.
I mean, I didn't even know what I was going to do when I got out of medical school. I didn't know. You don't know. When I got out of medical school, HIV did not exist. It did not exist. Talking about Ebola, it didn't exist. Ebola was we just uncovered that in 1975. So you don't know what you're going to be doing. So be prepared. Your job as a 14-year-old is to go to school. Period.
What you're doing right now, you know for sure that you like this.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
What are you most thankful for?
I'm most thankful for my health, to be able to do what I do. I'm most thankful for my family. I have 2 lovely daughters who are bright. They're gonna probably at some point, I'm hoping that to see they carry on the legacy of service. It's service. There are a couple of cliches like what's the meaning of life? The meaning of life is service. There's a little poem that I like. We talked about this. This came up earlier in our discussion. It's, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was duty. I acted, and behold, duty was joy. So that's it. Going to work makes me happy. My vocation is my vacation. I'm happy every day. I don't remember ever missing work in my entire life.
So when are you most happy? When you're working?
No, I'm happy all the time.
All the time.
But I'm always working. So I don't separate. I don't go to work as such. I go to the office, and then I go to the hospital, and then I go back home. I just go places.
Yes.
Like I'm working right now. This is part of my work. I'm talking about medicine. I'm educating. I'm having I'm marketing my practice. So I'm working. So this is fun, and this is the fun part of work. Sometimes it gets a little harder, and it gets a little more tedious, or a little more it's not as exciting, but it's still
Finish
fun.
this sentence for us. I look forward to Sunday evenings too.
I look forward to Sunday evenings because Monday comes up the next day.
What type of music calms you down?
Jeez. Well, I was a DJ when I
No, I
in
didn't
my
know
days.
that.
Of course, I
come
was a
on,
DJ. I was in a band. I did all of that
What?
stuff. Yeah, so I'm the guy who would play at all the parties. I still do. I play at the parties. So what kind of music? So all kind of music. My music is getting a little bit slower. It's a little bit less wild, but that goes with age.
Yeah.
But I could still.
So the doctor's always truly in the house, right?
Oh yeah, I could still shake a leg. Yeah.
This question I ask all my guests: what makes you laugh out loud?
Well, this conversation, I've laughed out loud a few times. I don't laugh out loud a lot, but I am always smiling, and
Yes.
I'm always happy. I guess a good conversation makes me laugh out loud.
Awesome.
Yeah.
G in the chat. In the chat room said, keep hammering at them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doctor, I have to say thank you for sharing your time with us. I mean, this has really been quite an interesting and informative conversation. And I hope you will return at some point so we can speak specifically about a particular topic, maybe health, some parts of health, something in health or something. But I enjoy this. And I mean, if there's anything you would like to say that we haven't discussed, feel free.
Well, I've had a great time. I really enjoy it. I think the questions from your chat group have been right on point. I'm glad that they're listening, and I'm
Yes.
glad that and I could see that you have some very smart people out there. And one thing I really do want to say though is I salute you for giving individuals like me this opportunity to talk. It's not often that we get 90 minutes to just talk about the journey. Cervantes said, I think it was Cervantes, the journey is better than the end.
Yes.
And so we're all on a journey. And certainly we'll get there. And I'm not even sure where the end is, but I have enjoyed the journey so far. And as I pointed out to you, it's not all been smooth roads, and sometimes there's been no road. I've been on paths that I've had to beat on my own. But it's fun, and it's fun all the way. And I just thank you for the opportunity to allow me to share this. I love to talk.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You are really welcome, and thank you very much. And I have to thank Dr. Kokai for recommending you.
A good buddy.
You're a good buddy. Yes. This is Selwyn Collins saying good night. Thank you for listening. Fear not what fear whispers to you. Fear your obedience to it.
Pain and agony, trying hard not to be a casualty. Casually dodging bullets in alleys like athletes. Keeping faith from where my path leads. My capacity to handle stress with hands more or less cuffed in back of me. Woman with dreams of living happily ever after, walking down the altar with a pastor there to trap me. Used to being different, now they acting more aggressive, but now I'm more selective, so I plot and make my exit. DMX said it, so now I do the math. Remember when I told the joke and chickens didn't laugh? Topic of the conversation, what I did or didn't do. They see doing this and that, now they interested in you. Strange G, tables turn, now they spitting game at me. Getting frustrated cause I caught a case of ADD, claiming to be someday not capable to be. They don't know.